Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to a conversation on the memorization of the Quran. Today we have a special guest with us, Hamzah Ghia from Houston. He is the director for Hamd Institute. Is that the appropriate title?
Yep.
Yeah. So, director of Hamd Institute. You're a native to Houston, right?
Born and raised.
Born and raised. Great.
Sir.
Fun fact: when I first came to Houston, this is back in 2015. I met Hamzah at Masjid Hamzah, and I thought, wow, this dude has got a masjid named after him too. Turned out he was just serving in a serving capacity there. The coincidence was that both his name and the masjid's name was the same. But since then, he's moved on to bigger and better things. This conversation is more in the context within the context of this program called Quran Flow. Hamzah Ghia is going to be heading up the memorization module, that whole program and level. He's going to be the instructional head, essentially, setting the curriculum and the content and how it's going to be approached. This conversation is more for those of you guys who are watching to get a better understanding of how we approach memorization, at least through his guidance in terms of what we're going to be doing here. For that reason, that's why we brought Hamzah into the studio today. Hamzah, assalamu alaikum, welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam. How you doing?
Doing good. So I figured let's go ahead and jump right into it. One of the things I was hoping that you can kind of shed some light on is getting a better understanding for what is the utility and from a material standpoint of learning to memorize the Quran itself. And I want you to go beyond just like the spiritual aspect, right? What is the utility of just what do you get out of learning how to memorize Quran?
So one thing off the back is, being involved with teaching Quran like for so many years, is that when someone can direct their heart towards the Quran, they become more disciplined in all of their other things in life, whether it's work, going to the gym, spiritually, emotionally, their well-being. It all goes hand in hand together. So once someone starts this journey, then inshallah the idea is that they will continue this journey towards till the end, right? They don't have to do it in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. That's a different program. But this is for anyone or everyone who would like to just get their journey started, get their feet wet, and connect back to the Quran.
So that's what you're going to get out of, I guess, learning to memorize Quran from a purpose, focusing on the idea of memorizing Quran. But the skills that will be employed or maybe even transferred in the process, what is the value of those skills, specifically in one's own just general personal life perhaps, or even professionally speaking? Because you mentioned like how it would apply for when you go to the gym and things like that. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Of course, like discipline is the number one thing that anyone will get out of this, right? So when you memorize the Quran, you have to have discipline. It has to be done every single day. There's no shortcuts. The cheat days can't be too many. You could have maybe, the occasional Eid or the occasional, okay, I'm going out with my family or I might be traveling. But what we always even tell our students at Hamd is that, if we are off, like the school is off, the Quran is never off. So you have to keep repeating, revising. It becomes something that's part of your life every single day. And imagine if the entire ummah was to hold on to the Quran every single day, what kind of impact would that have with everyone around us, with everyone within us, in our own families, in our own circles? If everyone was that disciplined to be able to read Allah's words every single day.
Now, you mentioned the work that you guys do at Hamd. Can you share a little bit more about Hamd, and figured this would be a good opportunity to kind of inform people about your background and what Hamd is and what you do there, and how that would be, how what you've learned there would be benefiting our students here.
So at Hamd, we have a full-time program for students from 3rd grade and up who come and they memorize the entire Quran. The goal is for them to memorize the Quran or study the Arabic language. So they have to pick one track. Along with them memorizing the Quran, they do some Islamic studies, and then they also do their academics. So if you're in 4th grade, you take 4th grade math, English, social studies, science. That way you're not behind in life, but also throughout this process, you're learning how to balance both your academic world and your world with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're learning how to be a well-rounded individual, a well-rounded youngster who will go out into the real world. Inshallah, we're hoping that we'll see doctors, lawyers, businessmen, women. We're hoping to see teachers. We're hoping to see all people from all walks of life. But we're now adding the title in front of them, Hafidh. So now they're Hafidh of Quran. They've learned adab, they've learned respect. And hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, they'll be able to carry this message and change the family's outcome as they grow older and they start their own families. The only difference now what we're doing is that's a full-time program. And now for this one, for this Al-Maghrib program that we're trying to do, Quran flow of memorization, it's to get people started. Now hopefully we'll give you the tools so that you're able to go back home, continue your memorization at your own time, continue memorization with your children. Often I tell people that we have to set an example. So now imagine if your child grows up and you're like, hey, I want you to memorize Quran, and you're sitting there. I always give the example of my mother, rahimahullah. She wasn't hafidha, but she could be cooking and she would correct my mistakes because she was so invested in me memorizing, and she would know my mistakes without looking. So she would be cooking and she would be like, repeat, like, hey, what's going on? Like, why are you making the same mistake again? So I'm hoping, inshallah, this will draw that connection so that families can have Quran time. And again, going back to our ultimate goal of everyone connecting back to the Quran.
Now, can you specify with a little bit more clarity as to, you talk about the ultimate goal, right? So big picture and final goal that you have for the students coming into this program is what?
The big picture is for you to connect back to the Quran. We want to give you the tools to show you that even while you may think you're busy and you may think there's a lot going on, which probably is, that inshallah ta'ala with the tools that we give you, you're still able to continue this journey of seeking knowledge, of learning the Quran.
Now, but that's in a broad sense, right? So I mean, I guess big picture. But if I were to ask you, like, normally, I guess in a program like this, whenever I'm working with an instructor, I basically ask them to articulate that you'll be able to cover A, B, C, and X, Y, Z via 1, 2, and 3, right? And so what would be those variables for this?
For this one, inshallah, we're going to be covering Surah Al-Mulk. We're going to be memorizing, inshallah ta'ala, one surah together. My job, inshallah, or our goal is for us to be able to get you to learn how to put the words together, for us to be able to help you with the similarities that come in the Quran, for us to be able to help you with the flow of the Quran. So that way, inshallah, you can understand the rhythm, you can understand the system, so you can take any part of the Quran that you would like, inshallah, in your own time, in your own journey, and you can continue with that, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Okay, so basically they come in assuming they don't know Surah Al-Mulk. By the end of this sessional module, which is typically about 4 months, about 16 weeks, they'll have Surah Al-Mulk down and the skills needed to continue memorizing, correct?
Inshallah, yes.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the process, right? In terms of how do we go about it. Now, obviously, what we're going to be covering is Surah Al-Mulk. But with relation to the skills that you'll be transferring and the things that you're going to be covering within that, what are those things?
So we're going to be talking about how to break down the ayah. Number one is how to look at the verses and not panic, right? A lot of times people, when they see long ayahs, they'll panic because they're so used to memorizing Qul huwallahu ahad or Inna a'tinaka al-kawthar, the smaller ayahs. So now they're going to be memorizing something that's a little bit bigger in context. And inshallah ta'ala, we're going to help them with renewing their intentions. We're going to help them with having a mindset that they can achieve. We're going to teach them how to keep that memorization in your head. Like oftentimes we'll memorize something and we'll forget because it's just been such a long time. We haven't done it in so long. A good example of this is, dua for janazah. A lot of times we've memorized this in Sunday school, or we did it back in Islamic school in 3rd grade, 4th grade, maybe even middle school. But whenever there's a janazah and we're going, I always see people, they'll message me, hey, can you tell me which janazah dua it is so I can review it? I've studied it, but I haven't. So similarly, we'll give you the tools, inshallah, so that you can have retention of what we're memorizing, inshallah.
Okay. So that covers what we're going to be doing. Now the question is, how are you going to go about what the process of what you're going to cover? How are you going to get covering that? Is the breakdown clear at this point, or are we still working on it?
The breakdown is clear, inshallah. We're going to be doing about 2 to 3 ayahs every week. We're going to be sharing 2 or 3 ayahs. We're going to review the ayahs together, and then I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to be able to continue during that week, to be able to keep whatever you have memorized. Obviously, the first few weeks may be simple for most people because they've heard the first few ayahs, they've read them before. But as we get into the longer ayahs, as we get into the longer verses, my goal is, inshallah ta'ala, to teach you how to keep them into your memory and how to continue with reading the surah, inshallah, without any mistakes, with perfect tajweed, and maybe even some understanding, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Okay. Now, in terms of covering the objective of this memorization program, with relation to action, right? What is it that the student, that we could appropriately promise that they'll be able to demonstrate?
So we're hoping, inshallah ta'ala, that students can break down any ayah of the Quran or dua that they would like to memorize. We're hoping that, inshallah ta'ala, students know the concept of review and how to review. And we're hoping, inshallah ta'ala, we can teach them how to get past through the struggles of memorization. And hopefully, inshallah, if they stick with us, they'll have this surah memorized and they'll have these tricks and tips memorized as well.
Now, are there any, I guess, from the perspective of you as an instructor, you have certain requirements, right? Let's kind of go step by step in terms of how do you expect and require the student to consume the material of this course?
So I want them to be able to, number one, have a growth mindset, that they can do it. I want them to come with the intention that what they're starting, inshallah, they're going to finish it as well. And I want them to come with some material. I want them to come with their own Quran. I want them to come with a pencil. I want them to come with a highlighter. And I want them to take this course with a brand new, like full energized mindset that, inshallah, they're going to walk through with us and they're going to be able to get to the end. And inshallah, hopefully, through the time of the course, we can go over times where you feel down and how to maneuver over those times when you feel like you want to give up, or if you felt like you procrastinated. I'm hoping, inshallah, I can help you not procrastinate and be part of the journey with us all the way till the end, inshallah.
Now, any kind of, I guess, learning journey, there's a learning curve, right? And to get through that learning curve, there's an expectation of the amount of time and hours that one needs to put in as a student. So from your perspective as a teacher, what is a minimum requirement per week, or maybe even overall through the course, that you would expect for them to put in order to get out what you've promised?
I would like them to give at least 25 minutes a day. And if they can give 25 minutes a day, I'm confident, inshallah ta'ala, they'll be able to complete the entire journey with us from beginning to end.
Okay. Now, with the time expectation, is there also a expectation and requirement for context with which they will be, one, consuming the material and doing the homework or exercises with relation? And I put this in, let me set the stage, right? I've had students come at me one time because we've produced other courses before, right? And sometimes even the visual aesthetic of the course might be such that there might be like a bright background, and then it might cut to a different angle and it's like a black drop, kind of like what we're seeing with you right now. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the students spoke to me directly, and he was just like, yo, like suddenly it was so bright and my eyes started hurt. I'm like, hold on a second, where are you? And what are you doing when you're watching this? He's like, oh, I'm laying in bed and I'm watching this material. I'm like, bro, you're studying like Quran.
And the lights are off?
And the lights are off, right? So this is literally his cell phone in bed. So, and unfortunately for that particular course, maybe the expectation had not been set for the context with which to consume and do the material. So perhaps you can maybe even relay that to us. Is what is the context and the setting with which you advise the students to that you would recommend and what you would not recommend in terms of the consumption of this material?
So the first thing I would obviously recommend is anyone who's studying Quran should have a place where they study the Quran in their home. They can create that place, they can have that place. It could be their prayer room, it could be their study, it could be on a table, or it could be on a floor. But they should have a set place where there's minimal distractions around. And if there's minimal distractions, you'll be able to focus more, right? Anything that has minimal distractions, you can focus more, inshallah. As we go through the journey, I will tell you some ways that, inshallah, you can review. And those things could be done maybe on your car drive to work, or maybe during Salah or right after Salah. But for the actual course, I would highly recommend people sitting in an area where they don't have kids, running around behind them. They don't have, maybe their spouse, yelling, inside the house, or they're like watching TV or something, but they have a focus area. Similar to the idea of, one of the things that we always learn as students of knowledge is we should place our shoes on the side, and we should come in and we should be able to study. So similar like that, you should be able to have a place where you can pray. And then I always tell people also when they're studying Quran or studying any type of knowledge, they should be well dressed. Don't come in your PJs like you're all lazy, you're not ready to learn. But I would highly suggest wearing something that you're comfortable with, but that's ironed, right? You're fully there, because the Quran is where Allah speaks to you. We're not just learning any book. This is a book of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to us. So we should dress for the occasion as well. Having proper clothing, they're ironed, you smell good, you've showered, so that way you're able to focus bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
It almost sounds like you're describing getting ready to get on the mat for the dojo. Where it's just like you're changing, you're making sure you don't smell bad, especially when you're going to be rolling with your partners. And at the same time, you get into that uniform. Once you get into that uniform, it's like, yes, my mind is set exactly where I'm going to go. And then you get on the mat, you take your shoes off, and that's a no distraction zone. And this brings me to the question of what are the most common distractions that people have to deal with? And maybe you have some tips on how to minimize or maybe even eliminate those distractions. And I say this with also keeping in mind, I know for me, doing something like this at home is almost a non-starter, unless it's after the kids have been put to bed or before the kids even get up. Because once the kids are up, it's there's nothing. Even now, this whole setup that we did over here, I had my kid here. And so it wasn't until my wife came to pick up the kid did we actually make progress in making things happen. And so what's your advice? I mean, you're a dad, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got kids, you kind of understand what I'm talking about. I'm sure a lot of our viewers are parents as well, whether they're parents of young kids or older kids. How would you minimize or eliminate distractions, especially when it comes to little guys?
So I would first and foremost, if you have kids who are older, maybe I would even do this course with them, so that way you can have some type of challenge. But if you have younger students or younger kids in your families, I would highly recommend one parent take the kids, so that way this is your time. You pick a time where you have less people around you. I would also recommend muting your groups or your phone and maybe putting it aside, because sometimes you get one phone call, your phone vibrates, you want to see who it is, and that's just a human thing. You want to respond immediately, wondering who messaged you, and obviously this is a big distraction. And this is something that I've seen when I was memorizing. At that time, there was only flip phones and maybe pagers, right? There was no kids had a phone. Even our teachers didn't have a phone at that time. We would all use the landline, which is non-existent now. But I would highly, those two things for sure. Make sure that there's less people around you, and make sure that your phones are a little bit away just during the time of this course, inshallah ta'ala. The 10-minute videos or the 5-minute videos that we have, hopefully, inshallah, at this time you're fully focused, you have your Quran, you've made wudu, you're clean, and you're ready to go, inshallah. And to your other part, every single thing that we do in life has a dress code to it. You go to a party, there's a dress code. You go to work, there's a dress code. You go for Eid Salah, there's a dress code. You meet someone that's valuable, there's a dress code. You go out with your friends, there's a dress code. Play sports, whether it's football, basketball, hockey, soccer, everything has a dress code. So even for Quran, we should have the same mindset that, hey, I should be able to dress for what I'm trying to accomplish, inshallah ta'ala. And you'll see, like, sometimes we feel like, oh, what does that have to do with anything? But it has a lot to do with everything. You know, if you look good, you clean up good, you smell good, it kind of gives you that, hey, that energy that, listen, I'm ready to go.
You look good, you feel good, right?
There you go.
Now, what is the expectation with the student in terms of how should they be able to see themselves grow?
So, I mean, I think, inshallah ta'ala, if you were to follow all the steps, like A through Z, you'll see yourself with more discipline, inshallah, within the course of 14, 15 weeks. I think you'll be able to see yourself connect back to the Quran in a way you haven't before. Maybe you've only memorized surahs of Juz Amma. I remember sitting with a parent, and he told me one time, he said, for 6 years back home, my kid knew from Surah Nas to Surah A'la. He just couldn't get past Surah A'la. Every time he started, he restarted. And unfortunately, that's a journey for a lot of people. What our hopes here is that we want you to get outside of your comfort box. We want you to be able to explore new ayahs and bigger ayahs. And especially as the month of Ramadan is coming, we want you to familiarize yourself with other words of the Quran and make it so normal that when you hear these words, you're able to, remember this surah and any other places where these ayahs or verses could be mentioned in the Quran to make it easy for you to connect back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now, one of the things you mentioned is something that is a common trend, where when it comes to people in terms of their knowledge of the Quran itself, with relation to what they've memorized. There's either people who have memorized a portion of Juz Amma, right? Not even the entirety of it, but a portion of it. Or they're like Huffaz, right? And the amount of people in between, whether it's like memorized maybe several juz, 5 juz, 10 juz, a few and far in between. And I was hoping you could, as a Hafidh yourself and as a teacher, what is the reason for which people kind of only make so much progress? The vast majority of it is just on that short side of the spectrum.
The reality is, because once the surahs get harder, then you kind of, you get stuck. So I'm sure a lot of people can, resonate with me when I say that, when you get to Surah Bayyinah, it's like that's the surah where everyone's like, okay, you know what? That's it. I'm good. From Surah Zilzal to Surah Nas, I'm happy, right? So a lot of people get stuck. So our goal is for you not to get stuck. Our goal is for you to explore other ayahs. And then when people restart their journey, sometimes they want to start back from Juz Amma, which is good. But the reality is because those surahs are so familiar, you either feel like it's too easy, or you feel like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this again. So you're like outside of the box, right? We want to bring you back into the box. So obviously Surah Al-Mulk, mashallah, has a lot of reward in memorizing it, as the Prophet ﷺ taught us, right? Whoever recites Surah Al-Mulk every single night, they will be saved from the punishment of the grave. And this is a very beautiful hadith that teaches us that reading Surah Al-Mulk every single night could help us in our afterlife, which is why we're all trying to do what we're doing. And subhanAllah, if you read Surah Al-Mulk with fluency and tajweed, and you have already memorized it, it shouldn't take you more than 5 minutes, 6 minutes to read from beginning to end. So we want to be able to show you that with consistency, with being able to start somewhere new, something that you don't know maybe, hopefully inshallah ta'ala you'll be able to get past through the Juz Amma or the first few pages of Surah Baqarah, where more people start. So I've used this tactic with a lot of people who are restarting their journey, or they're trying to rememorize the Quran, that just start from the middle somewhere. That way, inshallah, we can get you to the end goal, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala.
Now, speaking of Surah Al-Bayyinah, it's interesting that you mentioned, because a lot of people do find that hard. What do you think is the wisdom? Because I know with my kid, he's currently in kindergarten at Iman Academy. And we started him in the Quran program, and they started him off on Surah Al-Bayyinah. And my wife and I were looking at each other like, really, that the first surah? And I was wondering, as a teacher, what's the wisdom on having them start with such a seemingly difficult?
So when someone knows how to read the Quran fluently, like with looking, which hopefully inshallah everyone that's taking this course, they're able to read bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. The idea is to be able to show them that they can do something that's difficult. And once you do something that's difficult, everything else should come easy. So that's probably the idea that his teachers are probably thinking that, hey, let's get through the hard one first. That way the easier ones become a lot more easier. Okay. And so similarly, the idea that we have here is that, hey, let's get through Surah Al-Mulk, and then those who would like to go back to Juz Amma, inshallah, they're able to go back and get it down bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.
Now, with relation to Surah Al-Mulk and this memorization course, what is the yardstick with which we can expect our student to measure themselves against?
I mean, if they're able to follow along and they're able to memorize the ayahs that we go over, that's the goal, right? They may fall short, and that's okay. But the idea is for them to be able to see that I can get through this. And we would really, really want the students to be able to start and complete the course by memorizing the whole surah, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay.
So for beginners, usually like in the full-time program, like you're like 0 mistakes. Like if a student even stutters, we say, okay, go practice. But for this program, I would say, inshallah, they can recite the whole surah with less than 3 mistakes. That's the goal, inshallah.
Okay. Now, this methodology that you're employing for our students, where is this methodology from?
So, alhamdulillah, I've had the honor and I'm blessed to be able to teach a lot of college students. And a lot of times college students, when they come, are like, hey, we want to start memorizing. So when they want to start memorizing, I usually give them either a known surah or something that's from the middle of the Quran, just to kind of get their feet wet. So I'll give them either Surah Yasin, or do Surah Mulk, or I'll do the first and last page of Surah Kahf, just so that they can get started. So hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, the same method of teaching them consistency, we're able to teach the people who are taking this course consistency, and hopefully just like we see progress with them, we'll be able to see progress here.
Okay. Let's talk about you and your background. Let's first look into, because you talk about college students, you also mentioned at Hamd, you teach younger kids. Somebody might look at your experience and be like, okay, you've taught a lot of people, and my assumption is, like, especially with Hamd, all that is on site, right? They're with you, right? They're in attendance live. Whereas with Quran Flow, there is a live element where they're working with our instructors and they're connecting with them on the actual Zoom calls and live streams and things like that. But there's the recorded component with which this is what we're going to be capturing with you and I. But where's the confidence aspect of, like, how does a student know that what you've done before in one context is going to work for them in this context?
So alhamdulillah, we do have on site, but we also have online. We've actually had students memorize the entire Quran online. Same concept, right? We give them the lesson, they practice it, they read it, they come live, whenever they can. People who are out of town, people who are out of the country. So it's a proven method, it works. The idea is, in any type of knowledge journey driven program, is that you have to trust the teacher that's teaching you. And so if the teacher tells you, for example, those who have learned Arabic, they do the verb charts. They go fa'ala, fa'ala, fa'alu, they do the whole thing over and over. Like, why do I have to, do this? Or our teacher would give an example, they use that, Zayd was hit, or Zayd hit this child. And they use that same thing, like, who cares about who hit who, right? But the idea is to understand the concept of how to memorize. And hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, with our experience here, we're able to give you that confidence that inshallah it will work for you if you trust the process. No one can see results in one day. And even at Hamd, I tell people for a full-time program, when parents come, that you have to give me 6 months. You're not going to see results before 6 months. And so when even parents come to me after a month, oh, I don't know if this is, hey, 6 months was the agreement time. So over here, inshallah, we're asking you for 14 weeks. So inshallah, we'll, if you give the whole 14 weeks, I'm sure inshallah you'll see the progress.
Okay. So just to kind of summarize everything, let's start with our process, like what you're going to cover and how you're going to cover. So essentially, we're going to be covering Surah Al-Mulk, right, over the course of, although we have a 16-week time span, of those 16 weeks, 14 weeks are going to be going into 2 to 3 verses, right? And then there's going to be specific skills you're going to be transferring with each of those lessons in order for them to be able to understand and learn. So this way, not only after they've memorized Surah Al-Mulk, beyond the course, they'll be able to continue to memorize more, correct?
Correct. So
Okay.
I'm going to be walking, I'm going to be walking with them through the entire journey. I'm going to tell them how to memorize. I'm going to memorize with them a few ayahs. I'm going to tell them like, okay,
Is it
be
fair
careful.
to say that you're memorizing with them if you've already memorized it?
Kind of, because I'm going to be doing the same steps they should be doing.
Okay.
So kind of, yes. And then I will be, I'll also tell them, what to look out for where people get confused based on my experience. Alhamdulillah, if I was to put a number, I think over 1,000 students have studied Surah Al-Mulk with me. So hopefully, inshallah, I can take all that and I kind of have an idea. Like if you teach for so long, you know where the mistakes are coming. You know where the similarities are. You know when you're going to mess up or which ayahs get confusing. Amintum, amintum, so qul, there's qul, how many times there's qul, so how do you get them in order? Hopefully we'll be walking through all that, inshallah ta'ala.
Okay. And with relation, just again, the overall objective is for them to memorize Surah Al-Mulk, have the skills, be able to then take that beyond the course if they want to memorize more. And ultimately, the utility is that the very skills that they're learning, they'll be able to employ them in other aspects of their life, specifically the very skill of discipline, correct?
100%. Being anyone who's learning any type of knowledge, whether you're in school or whether you're in college, whether university, even when you're at work, if you're learning a new program, if you're learning, something new, it's all about consistency. The more you do it, the more you realize like what you need to learn and how you need to learn it. And once you've mastered something, you always realize that there's more you can do with it. I mean, just take a look at Excel, for example. Right now with AI, what are you able to do? Right? Just with a few buttons, you're able to do what people did for hours back in the day. Right? That's because someone took perfecting Excel with formulas and so on and so forth. And I use it as an example because I have an accounting background. So the more you look at it, you're like, okay, this is a lot easier. I can do this. I can do this. Similar is the concept of Quran. Even when you memorize Surah Al-Mulk, we're just giving you just a little bit. We're just on the line. And memorizing is just the first step. There's so much more to study about it that you'll be able to do bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Hopeful, inshallah.